welcome to this week's Fireside Chat with Jesse. I am joined today by DelRoy Stauffer, VP of Sales at Odessa. Thanks for joining me, DelRoy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Jesse. This is an awesome opportunity to finally be on one of these fireside chats. I'm excited.
No, I'm excited to have you on here. As I mentioned to you before we hit recording, this is episode 202, and I think I've known you since you got in the industry, and it's been a pleasure to watch your career path and the trajectory of what you've been able to achieve over the last, I don't even know, 7, 8 years. Could be longer. I apologize if I cut that short.
No, it's
But
7, yeah, so 7 years. Next month, actually, it'll be 7 years in the industry, which I know sounds minuscule to compared to I know a lot of people who've been in the industry for a really long time. It's an industry people tend to stay in. So seven though isn't nothing, but I know I have a long way to go for sure.
seven's a great number, man. It's
Yeah.
a good number. So DelRoy, for those individuals who haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, do you mind just kind of introducing yourself and your career to date so far?
Sure, absolutely. Well, it's nice to meet all of you in the Equipment Finance Cares Network and beyond. But my name is DelRoy Stauffer. I'm VP of Sales at Odessa. I grew up in central Pennsylvania and went to school at University of South Carolina. And so after college, I wanted to get back into the Philadelphia area. I'd always wanted to live in that city, and so I moved back up to Philly and worked for a couple years, 2 years out of college at a company called Cerner, doing some consulting for they do electronic medical record technology. So I would go around to hospitals and show nurses, doctors how to use the software. But I'd always been told, whether it was in college or by friends, like you should try sales. You're really outgoing, personal. You should really try sales. And so I started just doing the good old LinkedIn or Google like sales jobs in Philadelphia. Um, and what do you know? I find Odessa. No idea what they did, industry they were in, but they had a business development associate position open. Actually, fun story, it was a business development management position, and some of what they had put in the job description, I felt like I didn't match or didn't have the experience, but I went ahead and applied for it anyways. Got the interview, and then the rest is history. 7 years later, I found Odessa, I found sales, and then I found obviously the industry that we all call home, which is equipment finance. So how I got into it, just like a lot of people say, kind of fell into it, but it's been really cool to come in from the service provider side. I
Huh?
think it's given me some unique opportunities, different ways of climbing in the industry as well. So I've held some different positions too throughout my time at Odessa. So I've spent like a
Huh?
year and a half in marketing, but kind of all on the rev gen side. So now years later, business development associate, manager, marketing, and now then director and now VP of sales for us. So yeah, really cool journey, and I'm very appreciative of Odessa and our industry and the opportunities I've been given.
So to walk me through that like interview, if you don't mind, applying for this job, because I think they got lightning in a bottle with you, at that time, right? Um, what did they tell you about this industry, or did you have to go learn it on your own?
No, so yeah, it was really cool when I first applied. Like I said, I had seen the position and the description, and I didn't quite match. I didn't have the experience, but I went ahead and applied, and I got the phone interview. And it was just with our HR team at the time, and I had a great interview, and so I was told a couple days later that I would is invited downtown Philly. I was living out in Bryn Mawr area and working in Malvern, so it was going to be in Center City. Invited for this interview. I decided to decline it, actually. And so I'll never forget calling the HR team and saying, "Listen, I don't think I have the right skills." I was like, "This is asking for this many years of experience in sales. This." I said, "I just
Interesting.
yeah." I was like, "You know what? I think I'm gonna decline because like I think it's gonna be a waste of my time and a waste of your time." and not in a bad way. Again, I was just like, it's this imposter syndrome that
Yeah.
I probably carry to this day, right? And we all have a little bit of it. It was like,
Sure.
I'm
Sure.
gonna go down there, and then you're gonna be like, who's this kid 2 years out of college trying to, roll up and be a manager in our sales team? Um, but Madhu, one of our co-founders, called me a couple days later and said, "Hey, listen, I I got the feedback from your phone interview. I looked at your resume. Come down and let's just talk. And let's just see. And maybe it won't go anywhere, maybe it will, but give us some time, and we'll give our time to you, and let's see what happens." And so it turned out to be a 3 or 4 hour interview where I met Madhu, I met Keely, who was our head of marketing at the time, Jim Humphrey, who would be my boss, I think Jeff Lazinski. And so there was 4 or 5 people that I got a chance to sit down with and talk to about not only Odessa, but ask questions about the industry, talk about the little experience that I had out of college, but really a really cool process. Kind of really liked the company at that point, and the rest was history after that. A couple more rounds of discussions, but it
Sure.
really set the tone for an incredible experience and career so far at the company.
It's phenomenal. And sorry to kind of ask that question off the hip there, but I mean, the fact that they brought in those 4 or 5 people, I mean, you obviously made a very good impression on the phone interview. So good for you, man. That's awesome.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's not how it always happens, but yeah, very very thankful for it. It was cool, cool
Hey,
experience.
when people see good talent, they gotta bounce on it. So
Well,
it's
thank
great.
you. Stop. I'm getting flushed over here. No, but and vice versa. I think sometimes in an interview, you as an interviewee, you're also looking at the company and whether or not this is the right organization for you to work at. And I didn't know a lot of that then. Again, it was only my second job out of college, but looking back, I was kind of subconsciously doing that as well, like being able to meet all these different executives from all these different departments and them talk about what their teams are doing. I was kind of vetting the company at the same time.
Sure.
So
Sure.
it was cool. Yeah.
Well, perfect. Well, do you mind just kind of introducing Odessa, kind of what, the product that you have, markets that you're in, everything, DelRoy?
Yeah, absolutely. So Um, Odessa was founded in 1998. At the time, our co-founders, Jay and Madhu, had seen a gap or a need in technology and equipment finance space, and so they set off to create Odessa. And it wasn't. I think it was Odessa always, but our product was LeaseWave. We went through a journey, but they had seen this need and founded the company. And when we originally just kind of an end-to-end software provider. Since then, we've grown. Obviously, we've grown the platform, become more of a platform company, offering not only end-to-end financial technology, but also customer portal, partner portal, so interactions with your customers, your end users, your vendors, and then also ancillary tools like Odessa Build and Odessa Test, and even into auto now. So we've grown up kind of in this industry, and now from 1998, now 26 years later, we have over 1,000 employees globally. We have installs in 55 countries, um, offices in obviously the US, and then we have a sister office in India, but then we have satellite offices in Serbia, the UK, and Australia. Which, side note, I'm trying to do what I call a tour de Odessa, where I go to
I was
each of
gonna
those.
say, I was gonna sit there and say, I mean, like Serbia, make sure it's not in winter time.
Yeah.
Australia is beautiful, man. So maybe taking a conference while you're there, double dip.
Yeah. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna go on this nice global tour of our offices at some point, for sure. So if you're listening out there, Steve Nipak, uh, my boss,
just,
just
just, just, just saying.
throwing it out there, just saying. But yeah, we've grown a lot as an organization, and our history is always been in the equipment finance space. Obviously, now with adding auto, we're starting to diversify, but historically,
Sure.
100% of our revenue is always in this space. And even just in the time that I've been there, in the 7 years, we've had tremendous growth. I used to know most of the people that worked for Odessa, or like it felt like a small organization. We've definitely grown a lot over the years. And really what I think I appreciate as well is, as I've learned technology and technology sales and learned our industry, we do a lot of R&D work. 32% of our revenue we plow back into research
Huh?
and development for our product. So really cool to see, hey, the industry's changing. We want to offer new products to our customers. We need the technology to do that. We try to stay ahead of that as well. So
No, that's phenomenal. And then I guess from a technology perspective, when you started there, was LeaseWave still the product? And then it went to the platform shortly thereafter?
yeah, that's a good question. Actually, when I was preparing for this conversation, I was trying to remember the timeline. I had remembered I know that we were called Odessa Technologies.
Yes.
Um, and it was like an old logo of the Odessa Technologies. And they had taken it down. They were replacing it. So when I went for my interview, actually, there wasn't a sign there. And I was like,
Yeah.
there's a couple different rooms. And I was like, where is the and so that is when we were just the new Odessa with like the teal and the line under the O type of thing. I think it was shortly after I started that Leaseway was retired, and it was just called Odessa. But I think it was still referred to as Leasewave, and it took time to obviously to
It's
for
it,
the
it,
nag to really
it,
change.
it's tough, man. I mean, because people are like, "Oh, lease, you don't do any loans." It's like, come on, no. Can we think a little outside the box here? And because
Yep.
there's a couple other organizations that did the same thing, whether they changed their company name or changed product names, just because that's where the industry was going. More
Yep.
loans, more whatever, and they just had to. It's just those little things are just interesting, but from a platform discussion, I mean, I think Odessa was one of the first end-to-end platforms in equipment finance, obviously before you joined them. So
Yep.
that was like that buzz, right? I mean, that was one of the reasons I went to Lease Team at the time, was to help launch Aspire, because that was end to end. Because that's almost where people wanted to go, right? They didn't want to mess around with two disparate systems and so on and so forth. I almost think that that's now the other way around, where having just a platform like what you guys have today, and then if people want to use Salesforce, go ahead. You want to
Yeah.
use this other backend system, or a collection system, go ahead. Like,
Yeah.
but if you have a platform you can bolt all these things on. That's just what I'm seeing, DelRoy, and kind of want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we have always been end to end, and we've done it on a non-proprietary tech stack too. So we're a Microsoft .NET shop. We've created this kind of open API architecture too, because what we've seen and what we've realized is a lot of times it's kind of a pendulum. People will be like, we want everything on one platform, one vendor, one does it all. And then it swings all the way to the other end where they say, no, we want best in breeds of each of these platforms. But what happens in that case is you have 20, 30 different data sources that you're then trying to navigate a data and reporting nightmare. So I feel like it's somewhere in the middle of the sweet spot of like the functionality and capabilities of a core system that drives most of your core business. But yes, there are going to be other tools that you're going to want to plug in. Your sales team's going to want to work in Salesforce, or you're going to want to there's ancillary tools in anyone's tech stack. And so I think what's important is a system that integrates bidirectionally with those other systems, so that you have a cohesive network of products that you can able to streamline your reporting and all of that out of. Not just, hey, we have 20 of the best systems right now in the marketplace. We have no idea how they talk to each other or what we do with the data, but we can say we have these coolest tools. And it's the same thing internally at Odessa. It's the same thing we deal with our own tools is, hey, we want to have the interoperability between different tools that we're using internally as well. We try to, when we talk to customers, we really want to sit down with them and understand, what does your tech landscape look like? What is your overall strategy around data? Because we're going to be somewhere in that web and we're going to take up whatever portion of that web you decide. There's an importance in knowing how that fits in.
Sure. And from a business development, or I guess just sales perspective, you can go into somebody and you can have all those bright, shiny tools. And I guess it's just how do you maybe dull some of them to not just create a chaotic event? Because everyone is like, oh yeah, no, this is just what I want. This is just what I want. And then it's like you go in and then
Yep. Completely blows up 100%. Yep.
I just remember those deals back in the day. You're just like, oh yeah, let's keep it simple. Great acronym. And then all of a sudden you get on a call 6 months later and you're like, what happened? What'd you do?
Yes, and I think it depends too on like when you're talking to a company and you talk to like your main point of contact and you get to a point where you both understand, hey, here's what Odessa's providing and here's what this company needs. And they're like, now we're going to bring in all of the stakeholders. And you're like, awesome, because what we just defined as probably what you need is going to rapidly change as we get more cooks in this kitchen, for sure.
Wait a minute, you're not the guy. I thought you said you were the guy.
I thought you made the decision. All right. Yeah. But
you go back to like Jim and Madu at the time. Be like, by the way, our forecast just changed a little bit because this turned into something else completely.
Or really early on, I would sit there and I would just be like, and then I would turn to Jim and I'd be like, help. I'd be like, I don't. This, time out. This went way past. What are these people talking about? What do they mean? Vendor change. I'm really confused. And so that it was I know this is a little bit off topic, but it's kind of how I learned too about our industry and about Odessa. Even is like we had our onboarding and training and all of that, but a lot of it came from Jim would be like, hey, we're going to do a demo, let's go. And I would go with him and I would get to travel. And I was just this wide-eyed kid just experiencing business travel and everything for the first time. And I would learn. We would sit down with these different companies and their different executive teams, and they would ask for different things. And then I would scribble and everything down so that when I would be on the plane ride home, I could be like, Jim, what is this? What is this? So really kind of how I learned and just went in there and did it, I think.
No, and that's fantastic. I mean, I got in this industry when I was 23, and same thing, right? It's like, hey, let's do the road show. Let's go see this person. Let's go grab some coffee with that person. Let's see this of a trip with maybe you had 8 meetings. Maybe there's only 2 kind of ripe opportunities, but those other 6, I mean, there eventually could turn into something, or if not, you're gonna learn something. But what's interesting now is almost 20 years later. It's an awesome date of myself, right? Now getting opportunities with some of those people that I met when I was 23. So for those people you haven't done business with, DelRoy, you still got some time, man. You still got 13 years potentially before they might come to fruition. So
plenty of time. I see you out there. I know we've talked. We got another 20 years. Don't you worry.
We got time. Eventually, you will come my way. Eventually.
Yeah. It's interesting because I remember like, you always learn and we're always learning, always growing in our careers. I do remember feeling like, at the very first couple discovery calls I ran or sales calls I ran, being really nervous. And it wasn't until like, I feel like in the last year that I remember having a couple meetings with some presidents of some equipment finance companies just by myself. No backup from a manager or whatever, just like having these conversations and then knowing the right questions to ask and how to have that conversation. I was like, whoa, you know what? Wait, I did learn this. Like I am progressing in this. Like I don't know when it clicked, but it feels like it all of a sudden was like, hey, wait a second, maybe I can start to believe.
I mean, I think we're our own worst critics a lot of times. And I felt the same way between OSG and LTI. It's like, oh God, how can I do this? But even if you're sitting there and you're absorbing it, you might not be thinking that you can manage it, but you've been through enough of these where you think, oh, I got this. And then that in turn makes like me want to, then it's okay, well, who else can I potentially give my knowledge to put them in that position so they can grow?
Yeah. That's such a great point, Jesse, because I think it was recently I think it was at the ELFA Equity Forum, actually, that we had a good discussion on this. Or I think we were talking about sponsorship, mentorship, finding somebody who's kind of like your sponsor who pulls you up or who puts your name in there for the promotion in the right rooms, that kind of person. And I was part of a panel at the discussion, and I remember saying, like, you know what, something that dawned on me very recently, I think it was maybe with my recent promotion to VP, it was, at what point am I supposed to turn around and help the next person? When do you feel like enough people have helped you, it's now time to help the next person in line? I was like, I think it's now. Like, I think it's now that I can say, hey, 7 years in, there are people who are just starting in our industry, whether at equipment finance businesses or at service providers, that would look at me and say, hey, you're a VP. Where sometimes I don't, again, like your own worst critic, I don't think I'm that far along in my journey, but yet they would they would benefit from knowing some of this. So I think it's important to remember now is the time you turn around and kind of help that next person.
Sure. I mean, I think I probably remember our first conference that we met at. It was probably an ops and tech conference, and I remember your bright-eyed, bushy-tail,
Yep.
and you were like, "Hey, Jesse," and I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" Because I knew Jeff and Jim very well, and
Yeah.
probably like, "Well, hey, you're our competition." I'm like, "I don't care, dude. What's going on?"
Yeah.
like,
I know. I
but
remember. I think remember Jim being like, "Yeah, it works for Lee's team," and I was like, "Oh no," you know. But I've learned. I've connected with competition since. Like we're all in this together, so to speak. But yeah, I think
yeah,
it's. I do remember actually. I think the first conference that I was at was the 2018 ELFA Ops in Tech because I had started at Odessa 2017, so 7 years in September, but I think it was September, October. It was right after annual convention that I had started of 2017. And so
okay.
the I think it was the Ops in Tech that was my first conference. And I
And
just remember being like,
was that in Philadelphia? Maybe.
yes, yeah, pretty sure.
Okay. Okay.
Pretty
Yeah.
sure. It was
Yeah.
crazy.
Like, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I remember that first year there wasn't a lot of I mean, I think there was probably like a funding conference. I know that happens in April now. I didn't go to any of that. So I just remember that first year just being like calling, emailing, calling, emailing. I'm like, these people have no idea who I am. I'm not getting anyone. Like I wasn't getting anywhere. I remember going to gym kind of frustrated, like when does something click here? And it was
It's
that
tough,
first
man, because
conference.
yeah, it's tough because Jim knew everybody, and like Lisa was there before, and she knew everybody. So it's hard, man. It took me a long time, a solid 18 months, um, for it to finally click. I think I got my first deal 9 months in
Wow.
to equipment finance, and then all of a sudden it was two, three, and four came right away. Then after like between 12 and 18, that's where it kind of okay, this person's going to be around for a while.
Yeah.
Let's give the kid a chance.
Yeah. And it was actually it was at my first annual convention then. So we had ops and tech and then annual. I think it was at annual that I started being like, "Hey, I've been emailing you and calling you and those people talk to me and then from then on would answer the calls and pick up the phone." So I think it's a testament to the relationships that are drawn in this industry. I think like it's such an important part of our industry. And it was meeting those people face to face for the first time that then built that rapport and you know, maybe they weren't doing something, but they still picked up the phone because they had met me at annual or whatever it might be, you know, which I think is really cool.
And you touched based on the equity forum that you guys just had in your
Yeah.
backyard there. So I wanted to change gears a little bit and talk about that's a relatively new conference. And did you chair that?
Yeah. So I was part of the founding committee when Scott Thacker put this together back in 2019. Actually, he had
Okay.
asked for me to be on the committee at the time. We all met for the first time at ELFA annual in DC, I think. Deb
Okay.
Rubin helped lead like a workshop session for us for kind of a new committee. It was the first committee I'd ever sat on with the ELFA, so I was still learning some of that too. So fast forward years later, we had our first two equity forums in 2022 and 2023 because of COVID. We had
Sure.
talked about it right away, having some sort of conference or meeting, but we weren't able to. So it was in 2022 we had our first one. 2023 I took over as chair,
Okay.
following Scott. And then so this year, in Philly, just so happened to be in Philadelphia this year, I chaired yeah, that conference, and it was kind of this year the ELFA decided to put it back to back with Emergence, which was really
Yeah.
cool, because it was a lot of the same people want to kind of attend both, or maybe budgets only allow them to go to one conference versus the other. This was an opportunity to stay an extra day or two, but to be able to experience two different conferences. So yeah, it was an incredible event. We had some really great speakers and panelists and a fireside chat and some really good discussions, and the importance of it in our space. So
So how are you saying? I know you mentioned Scott Thacker. He's been a you know DEI champion.
yeah,
Basically his entire career, and then I think we've seen a lot more activeness in that
yeah,
just in the last 3 to 5 years. DelRoy,
yeah,
like
I agree.
how do you see that progression um, coming along in this industry?
Yeah, I think well, this is just my opinion, but I
Sure.
think the progression in the industry is very noticeable. I think from my first ELFA annual to now, I see a lot more diversity. I see a lot younger talent. I see a lot of women now. Like it's a slow progress, but it's a progress nonetheless. That's my opinion. I see it changing. I think opinions on the importance of it will shift. It'll shift with political climates. It'll shift with
Sure.
personal opinions. It'll always be ebbing and flowing, but I think what's important to remember is as long as we're making progress, albeit however slow, it's progress nonetheless. And I think um, knowing that it's not a focus on just like as many different people as possible, it's we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity. It's still the best talent, it's still the brightest minds, it's still the you're not offering the job to offer the job to somebody to check a box. It's no, but everybody has that opportunity. And I think that's where like, you know, I've never experienced personally, I've never experienced discrimination for my sexual orientation. I can't imagine what that would feel like, but like I've never experienced that. And I can't imagine if I was the most qualified person to be in sales at Odessa, but I wasn't selected because of XYZ. What we're saying is, hey,
Yeah.
the brightest person gets it no matter what, not because of something, if that makes sense. So um, and I it goes back to too Odessa and opportunity. I know like it's harder for younger generations to experience like annual convention because it's typically like more executive level people. So I think it just comes down to what makes the most sense for different conferences, but making sure everybody gets opportunity.
Well said, Delroy. Well said. Yeah, I mean, going to not to pick on ELFA, but going to their events. I mean, it's 2 to 4 grand between travel, registration, and everything else. Annuals 5 minimum.
Yeah.
So it's not everyone. You know, companies just don't have the budget to send everybody, and that's one of the things that we try doing with some of our regional events. Is you have a lower price point, you have an afternoon. Obviously, you're not getting out of that what you would get if you went to an annual convention, because we probably have between 50 and 70 people at our regional events. But it's like, how do we make those? How do we get more younger people there? How do we offer those as an offshoot to
I
provide some of that networking?
No, I agree with you, Jesse. I think it's a great outcome of having those events, or maybe the intention was, hey, we want to just focus in regional events, but what it's causing is like, hey, these are opportunities for people who might not get the travel budgets or don't have to travel as far if they're in the general area to experience an industry conference type of thing
Yeah.
or a collaboration amongst people to meet people. So I think it's an incredibly valuable thing that Equipment Finance Cares does is those regional events to be able to reach some of the younger people in their careers, at events that they wouldn't be able to normally travel to. Like it goes back to the beginning when we talked about how I think I'm very thankful for Odessa and the opportunity they gave me because I came in as a service provider in the industry and my job is sales. I'm supposed to meet these people. So first year in, and I'm at an annual convention. I know that is not the same for everybody who's their first year in our industry. It's just not the case. And so being able to have regional events like you do allows for people to meet and build their networks. It's how they're going to be able to climb the ladder. It's really important. And so I really appreciate it. I know there's many different things that come out of Equipment Finance Cares, and it's about the charities and associations involved in it. But I think as a kind of a part B, it also allows for a lot of the younger generation to get a part of our industry for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, I when my first job at OSG, I went to my first annual. That was well, I think it was 2005, and that was the hurricane.
Oh no, the one in Florida.
The
Yes,
one in
yes.
Boca. So that was my first ever ELFA conference, but it was actually, I hate to say this, it was a blessing in disguise for me because instead of there being 1,200 people there, there was maybe 400, and it was like you just got the community, right? Because like, oh, you came down for this and everything else, and young kid, people just walked me around, and that really helped me out because I'm sure you can walk up to pretty much anyone in this industry when you just got started. They'll put their arm around you and be like, "Who do you want to meet?" Yeah. That's just the type of people that we have here. Even when they're like, "Oh, Odessa, I've been on InfoLease for 30 years. Good luck, kid. But is there anything else I can help you with?"
I mean, it's really cool. It is really cool how our industry just is. We embrace the members of our space and we want to help people learn and meet other people and grow. And it was always interesting because I felt like as a salesperson, you're like, but Odessa, and they'd sometimes be like, no, I'm helping you meet, but we're good. And so learning how to navigate that was also very interesting too early on because I was, right out of the gate just trying to let's go. And sometimes
it's our job, man. It's our job. You got to put food on the table. That's
exactly,
the job.
exactly.
So
But
they're
like
not
you
looking.
said,
You slip a business card in their front pocket or somewhere, and it's like, yeah, okay, here you go.
slip over a pair of Odessa socks, be like, where'd these come from?
Yeah.
But it's like you said, I mean, still plenty of time to do business with me, 20 plus more years. So we have time on our side.
That's awesome. So, DelRoy, ask everyone who comes on the program to give me a little fun fact about themselves.
Yeah.
So, what makes DelRoy tick outside of equipment finance?
See, I wrote a couple things down because I was like, obviously, the one fun fact that I always talk about is the way I grew up and growing up Mennonite. Very fascinating upbringing in central Pennsylvania with being for those who don't know, just basically.
Yeah, I watched Amish Mafia. I got you.
It's basically like that, except very different, and that show is probably fake.
I'm just messing with you. Sorry, I mean, it's
No,
your
I know.
story.
I know. No, it's funny because people typically say like when they hear that they're like Amish, although different, very unique upbringing. I think growing up with minimal technology and just a very sheltered upbringing, I find two things come out of it. One is I do appreciate it now, years later, realizing the importance of being very content in life with your blessings. I think is really cool whenever I travel back there and my husband and I go back and visit. He'll just be like, these are some of the happiest people I know. And I think that's really cool. The other thing I always think of is like, I remember being this kid just like dreaming of one day doing really cool things. And at the time, I think it was like, oh, I want to be the president of Coca-Cola. I forget, like as a kid, you just like pick something. But it was recently where I was like, I was upgraded for the first time on a flight and I had my promotion that I sat there and I was like, the woman next to me was like, "Are you crying?" And I was like, "Don't worry about it." Because I had this moment of like, I feel like if I could just go back and tell this little kid on a hay bale in central Pennsylvania on a farm, guess what? One day, I think it
Yeah.
would have blown his mind. I really do, which is really cool. Fun facts number two.
That's
The
awesome.
R in DelRoy is technically capitalized.
Yeah,
So
I messed that up. Yep.
no,
No.
it's all good. I've spelled it with a lowercase r for a lot of my life, but for a lot of my life. But what I realized recently, I was looking through some stuff for my mom. She had passed away from cancer years ago, and I was looking through. She had made a baby book for me for my first year, and she had written DelRoy with capital R all over. And I realized, and I remembered it. That's how it's supposed to be spelled. That's how my grandmother spells it. It's how it's on my
Huh.
birth certificate. I remember when she first got cancer and we went to school. I was homeschooled for the first 5 years, first through fifth grade. And so when I went to school in sixth grade, it was so new of an experience. And DelRoy is already kind of a weird name for most kids in sixth grade that I just remember spelling it with a lowercase r because I was like, you know what? At the last thing I'm going to do is draw even more attention to like Mennonite kid, mom is sick, homeschooled his whole life, and now he's here with a capital R. So the one thing of that I could change was just
Sure.
lowercase r. So years later, it was like last year that I found this baby book and was looking through it. And I was like, you know what? What the heck? It's supposed to be a capital R. That's what my mom wanted. And so for those out there who want to, it doesn't matter. My own husband spells it with a lowercase r. But um but when I can and when I can be intentional about it. Fun fact, uppercase R.
I will do my best, but no promises.
All good. All good.
Oh, that's neat, man. And
Yeah.
so when you were sitting in that first class seat, when they offered you a drink, you said yes, right?
Because I was a Mennonite. No, no, yes, I did. I actually said I actually it's like I'll take 2 glasses of champagne, please. No, kid. I did. I did. But I mean, how cool to think about like it feels like quite the juxtaposition, to be honest, in my life from then till now. And I'm thankful for every part of the journey, for sure.
Well, you wouldn't be there without your hard work. So make sure, I don't have to say make sure you keep that up. Just keep doing the great job that you are, DelRoy.
Well, thank you, Jesse. I appreciate you.
Um, Last question I have for you.
Yep.
Why should someone want to do business with DelRoy in Odessa?
Well, that's a great question. Good way to close this out. I think there's a lot of different providers. There's a lot of different service providers in our industry. I think when someone asks me what's the value of Odessa or what's the differentiation, I think it boils down to really 2 key things. One is the industry expertise that we have here at Odessa. And it goes back to that first interview with all those different people who had been in our industry for a long time, who understand the industry. So I think we have a great mix of people who've been in equipment finance a long time who get it and who understand it and therefore have created a product that fits. I think the second is we've designed a platform with our end customers in mind. And whether that's through like customer and vendor portals or their ability to configure the system themselves or configure workflows themselves, it's all about what do our customers need so that they can provide the best level of service to their customers. And I think that's what differentiates our platform, and why a lot of the people that come to me and we do business together, it all boils down to they want to change their customers' experience. So how do I as a vendor help them accomplish that?
Well,
So
perfect and well said, DelRoy. I
yeah,
really appreciate your time. That went by really fast.
yeah,
Did a
I
great job, man. Thank you.
very
Thank you
fast.
again.
I looked down like 5 minutes ago and I was like, we're almost out of time already. I thought I was gonna have to start making up stuff to get the full time, but turns out it was a great conversation. I really appreciate it.
All right, man. Well, look forward to seeing you here in a couple weeks at probably Option Tech in Nashville.
Yep.
And thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you as well, Jesse. Appreciate
Thank
the
you.
time.